Welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. I'm joined today by old Eric McGrath
Why am I old? Why am I
And-
old Eric McGrath?
Lady
'Cause
Mary
you're-
Belden McGrath.
Because your birthday will be actually when we play this, it will be your birthday.
Wait, when is your birthday, Eric?
January
birthday.
16th.
I will be turning
Oh.
27 years old.
A beautiful.
Plus,
29.
no,
Plus-
plus 25.
no,
Quit
hold on
adding.
a
You're
second.
adding years.
Oh.
I'll be 52. We don't
You'll be
need to add
52.
random years to my life.
Well,
old.
Eric is here to add his infinite wisdom. that was an accidental compliment. Infinite wisdom.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Infinite
but-
wisdom.
We don't need to linger too much on that.
No, we don't need
we-
to make his head explode more than it already is.
Well, we're starting off the year strong in these episodes that we have coming out in the beginning of January here, and in the beginning of the year, you mostly talk about hope and growth and positive things, but today we're talking about adversity and how that applies. Because as you set goals in the beginning of the year, we'll be fooling ourselves if we say there's not going to be adversity that happens in the business in your personal life. And so we want to talk about, how do you move past that? How do you overcome that adversity, move from a fixed to a growth mindset? And so that's what we're diving into today. So Mary, you broke out into song whenever we talked about this topic before we recorded. So I'm going to give you center stage here to kind of open up this topic, and let's go ahead and dive in.
Well, and first when you said, the first of the year is all about hope and growth, it was like kumbaya and good stuff. And we come in, we're like, no, you're going to have adversity.
Yeah.
No, it's,
You just had to
you're gonna have
overcome your
adversity.
imposter syndrome.
Right. Yes, this is one of my favorite topics, and also a topic that I constantly would work on. Years ago, we were introduced to this book called Mindset by
Mhm.
Carol Dweck, and it was actually, I love our college sports teams because the coaches read the most amazing things that help with mindset. And a lot of coaches will have their athletes read this book before season starts. So we were doing a training. I better read it so I know what I'm talking about. And I was in awe because I did not realize, we teach it, but I didn't know that there was actually this whole formula to it. So Carol Dweck, way back years ago, she is a professor for Stanford, and she was studying how people respond to failure. And she actually was just doing it. She didn't know that some people liked failure, and they didn't. She just thought, I'm just going to watch and just study this. So she did a thing with, they were 10-year-olds, puzzles, had them do different puzzles. And so she's getting ready to write her notes, and all of a sudden this kid starts clapping his hands and going, I was hoping this would be informative. I was hoping this would be challenging. And she's like, what?
Kindergartner.
10 years old.
He's
And
now
then-
running Google.
Right. So what she started doing was there was a couple kids in there that just got geeked out about failure. They didn't look at it as failure. And so she started studying and realized that we have different mindsets. And it's not whether, you have it or you don't. It's understanding what the mindset is and how do you shift it. And so some of the classes that we've taught, we've brought it in, the mindset. Things such as, how do you handle feedback? How do you handle challenges? Skill set, effort, setbacks, failure. And looking through this, a fixed mindset, something's happening to you. And usually it's out of your control, or you think it is. And a lot of times people will run from it. So in relation to the 10-year-olds who were doing these puzzles, what she found that is, if it was really challenging and they were given the opportunity to not do it, they would give up. Like, they wouldn't do the hard stuff. In other studies, she found that if kids didn't know it, they would look for people who were lesser than them to build themselves up, or they'd even cheat. But the flip side with the growth mindset, it is, how do you handle it? Do you look for the lesson? Do you get giddy and going, gosh, let's fail forward? But I find that human nature isn't typically like that. In fact, I'll do,
Yeah.
have people take, not a study, but I'll say, by a show of hands, how many of you like failure? And usually 0, maybe 1 person will raise their hand.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I mean, how many of you really, really, really like to put yourself in hard situations where you know you're going to fail? And people don't necessarily do that.
Hmm.
And the growth mindset is the ability to truly put yourself in that place where you're not the expert, where you can fail, that you can fail forward, that you can learn from it and go, I was hoping that I can grow, but
Yeah.
it's,
Well, so do you think that this is and I want to get back to like how application wise, like how the university coaches, what the application was for their athletes, but based on that study and things that you've seen in trainings and stuff, do you
Mhm.
believe that this growth mindset is it a learned behavior, or is it just something that's innate in some people and others really struggle with getting to that place of developing a growth mindset?
I think it's all the above.
Mm.
I really do, because I think that when part of it is learned, when we're born, I look at little babies and I love the concept because we were born to fail forward. Like everything within us, we never were brought into this world knowing how to do it perfectly.
Mhm.
Even when it comes to walking, right? We fall down, but there's something in us at a very young age where we fail forward, we get back up and we do it again. And something happens around 5 to 8 years old where failure is hard, adversity is hard. And it's like putting our hand on the stove. It's like, we don't want to get burnt again. And so we go inward. And if it's painful, we won't put ourselves out there.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're blessed with caregivers and mentors that they teach us, no, baby, make that mistake. It's okay. And they celebrate. And I've met people like that. And there's a piece of me like, gosh, I wish I would have had that. It's, what are your thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I want
I
to. Yeah,
just
because I want to go to the application of like how the coaches applied it to their athletes with the book that you were mentioning. But yeah, based on that kind of foundation, Eric, where do you land with all this?
Man, my mind was going all over the place while you were talking. So the to answer the media question, is it innate? Is it learned?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very learned. I think it's and I can personally give examples of shifts in behavior. So it has a lot to do with our mental frame, how we self-talk, how we work through what goes on, and also the supporting cast that's around us, and do they help foster a story in our head of we can accomplish and succeed versus not. So going backwards, I grew up, my father was an architect and an engineer, super analytical, expected things done correctly, but it was also rooted in failure was connected to, or mistakes or anything like that was rooted to his self-worth. So if he made a mistake, if he was wrong on something, then he was personally, it was like he could feel it. It was personally, he was less than a person. So
Yeah.
that's what I grew up around. And that was the kind of mindset. My mom, man, I wish we could have both. Dad's passed, mom's 70. We're not going to get her on here, but my mom is like, she just looks at stuff and like, I don't know, do it. That's just her mindset. Just go do it. See what happens. And she just literally complete opposites on this.
Yeah.
And so being a typical boy, wanting to make my dad proud, I was very hypercritical up until somewhere around 17. And when I started, and I was super unpopular. I was not, I was the kid that ate in lunch alone. Bullied, all those type of things that went on. And somewhere in there, and I was playing soccer, and I was really focused on my head was just, I didn't understand what I was focused on at that age, but I was like, okay, this isn't getting me where I want to go. So I'm like, when I go to college, I'm going to show up like a different person. And there have been times in my life I'd been that person in soccer and summer camps and different places where I got to recreate my ecosystem, and I got to just step into, I'm confident, I own this, I can go do it. And interesting enough, I for the most part did that. I just showed up at college and went, I'm a different person. So at 17, I was kind of making those decisions. Now, I say this because I then was like focused in on how do I do this? How do I get control of what's going on? And really connected it to I'm insecure underneath. That's why failure is such a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, and it was all the stuff that I learned from my dad. So it's probably more than you want in the story, but it's for me, the transition and it's an ongoing transition. The transition is everything Mary just said, is this mindset and being supported around both by people and by the things that I do, that failure is, I don't like to fail. I make a mistake and I screw it up. I get frustrated, just like everybody else, but pretty darn quickly afterwards, I'm like, all right, what'd I learn? What can I do differently? And when I'm managing people, that's always where I'm managing from. It's like, it's not, oh God, you screwed up. It's like, is this the 10th time we screwed this up? Did we learn from this?
Yeah, right.
Or did we mess up first time? Let's learn from it. Some mistakes, especially in business, they're really expensive. You don't want to make them.
Yeah.
But usually when they're really expensive, you learn a really amazing lesson that goes with it. So as like, there's I'm going to screw this story up, but there's like, it's like one of those Asian proverb type things, right? And there's this guy and he's in a village and he's out working the field and he's out there with his son, and his son like rides a horse up there and he falls off the horse and he breaks his leg. And everybody in the village is like, oh no, that's terrible. And the dad goes, maybe. And then the next day he's laid up in the village, and the soldiers come, and they're coming to acquire, I forget what you call it, but acquiring soldiers. Like they're picking up people that they're going to put in the army, and he's got his leg broke, so he doesn't get brought into the army. And they're like, oh my God, that's so lucky that he had his leg broken. He's like, maybe. And then the next day something happens, and he's like, because the goodness or badness of a failure or a success really isn't realized till long after the moment. And it's, did we learn something from it? How did it sway our life and how did it move? So when we're in the moment, we're only looking there and it's connected to our insecurity, then for sure, it's like this horrible thing. But the reality is the worst moments of my life, my divorce, I don't know, just the worst things I can think of, all have made me massively better. So when you go through tough stuff and you start framing it that way, and you really start to embody this failure equals success, it starts to change things. Now take it to our athletes. That's where you want to go to.
Yeah. Well, what's the application whenever you're talking to somebody? Theoretically, college students who are coming into a sports team have a fixed mindset. Winning has been easy. They're top of their high school team. They don't like to do hard things. All that we're operating in that. Not that I'm saying that's the stereotype, but how do you go about training or developing someone to slide the scale from fixed to growth mindset?
Well, and that's not just the athletes. It's I see in the business world all the time.
Well,
It's even like sales. It's salespeople. It's anyone who comes in and a lot of times they're the top of their game, and someone's better. And this is where you'll see it.
Anytime
Does
there's
that
like
person
a transition from you go from the top of your game to the next like high performance team, and you find yourself at the bottom and you work your way back up. And so that's always a big friction spot, whether it be athletics or in business.
So in that mindset does that person embrace it and go, I'm going to put in the extra hours. I'm going to find a mentor. What can I do? How can I get better? Instead of making excuses or, I didn't get to start or that account wasn't given to me. So even looking at those mindsets and the mind shift, what can I do? Like that awareness.
But you're saying, how do you do it? So anybody can do this. This is not hard. If you if you're in that situation, right? Let's take an athlete that they're going to college, they're top of their game. Now they're around everybody that was top of their game. They're finding out, you know what? I'm not, Messi on the soccer field all of a sudden. Now I'm like, oh no, I'm lower tier. And then there's this process we go through where it goes straight to the heart of how we talk to ourselves. Most of us don't walk in there and go, oh, wow, I really need to work harder. Yay, I get to go crush it now. And they go, it's not that. So you've got to start programming your brain. You've got to write what you want to be there. You've got to surround yourself with phrases and things that mean stuff. You've got to be speaking it into reality. When it sucks, you got to go, that sucked, but I can do this. All these things, they're not like foo-foo things. They are proven to work. You have to reprogram how you're thinking and handling adversity. But what most people do is they thrive on the attention they get from being the victim. So I walk in and I'm no longer top dog, and now it's hard and it sucks. And I call my parents and I'm like, oh God, the coach is mean to me. And oh God, this is hard. And oh, I just want to quit. And the parents are like, oh baby, come here, and like, you come home on every weekend and I'll fix you your meal, like they comfort them. And the reality is that fire that they're in, that challenge that they're in, is going to define them moving forward. I was on a coaching call yesterday. This kid's awesome. I'm not going to give his name, but he's amazing. And he just want to reach out and he's like, what do I do? He's in a stage in his career where he's left college. He's new in his career and he wants to shift it. And we were talking while he didn't have his first job and he was out of college, and he was terrified. Like, absolutely terrified. He's like, he's in this space and he's like, well, nobody will hire me. And I go, how many people have you applied to? And he goes, 10 people. And I was like, over what period of time? The last 3 months, I applied to 10 places. And I was like, I said, so, okay. So you have failed to get an interview, and actually got called back on 1 or 2 of them. Just didn't want the job. Right. So I'm like, so you've got whatever that is, 10, 20% callback. You haven't landed a job yet. Why is it taking you 3 months to get to 10 people? And he goes, well, I researched and I make sure I apply the ones I want. But I said, how about this? Let's change the approach. How about you don't go after getting a job? I said, instead, why don't you go after learning how to interview really well? So your job is just to get a ton of interviews and something that might be interesting to you, but probably isn't. And you're just going to do this and practice interviewing as hard as you can. How many of those do you think you could land over the next 2 weeks? And he was like, I mean, I don't know. Well, I said, let's set a goal. What are you going to go after? I said, if you were really going to learn how to interview, not land jobs, and your whole thing was to get as many of these as possible, how many could you get? And he goes, I don't know. I could probably get 10 this week. I go, okay, 10 this week. I go, let's see how many you can, if you really put to it, how many hours a day are you going to work on this? And we boiled it down, right? He's putting like 4 hours a day in and all this stuff. And I go, and you're not worried about researching the company crazy. You're just going to get the interview. And he goes, okay. 120 companies in a week he applied to.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. He landed like, I don't know how many interviews he got out of it, but he landed one. He was all excited about it. He got the job. And it was like, and I said, what was different? And he's like, well, I didn't care if I got the interview. I wasn't worried about failing is what it came down to. Yeah. And so what it was, his fear of failing, his lack of confidence that he wasn't enough, and all these things that were playing into it were limiting him and making that story come true. So it reaffirmed the story that I'm not enough. Yeah. And it's this thing on the inside of us, this fear on the inside of us. So what if I fail? What if I can't move forward? What if it doesn't work? What if it's painful? And I'm telling you, you want it to be painful sometimes, because that's where we learn. And if you don't get excited about the pain, you haven't been through enough pain.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy, but
anyway. So what you're talking about, that fixed mindset does come from so much of that fear of what if I'm wrong, fear if I fail. So we've had David Roditi on here, and he is the TCU head men's tennis coach. He actually was coaching my grandson, or our grandson, for a while, and it was on mindset. And he was talking. So our grandson's name is Landon. Call him Lanny. And he was talking about Lanny 1 is the kid who is on the soccer field and you are like confident, like you know who you are. You're playing because you just love the game and you were in this flow state. And he said, what does Lanny 1 do? What is his thought process? What is his body language? All of this. So he walked him through this and he goes, okay, so Lanny 2 makes a mistake. Lanny 2 is crushing on himself. What does he do? And so Landon would say, this is, I run away from the ball. I don't want it. I don't call, like, it's like, what's your mindset? What's your state? What are your thoughts? And flipping that and teaching moments with the athletes, with life, people in general, when you know and you're aware, what is my state? Am I running to it or am I running away from it? Am I crushing on myself because I'm not getting the sale? I'm not getting the result. I'm not getting like whatever that is, I'm not getting. Pay attention to your mindset. If you stop doing what you know and you make excuses and you justify and you quit, you're in a fixed mindset. And how you shift it is you have to want it and you have to look for the lessons. Like Eric was saying about the kid. So instead of being afraid to fail, what if you just have fun with what you're doing? Make it a game.
Yeah.
And in those moments, when we give ourselves the ability and the grace to go, I started this job because I like this. I started playing this sport because I love this. I went after this goal because I wanted to be healthy. And if I fall, the fixed mindset says, well, you fucked up. Excuse me. You messed up. And we quit. The growth mindset says, you messed up. Get back up. Fail forward. What did you learn? Why is this important? But we have to do the work.
So what have y'all seen in the personal experience of developing this growth mindset? What's been some tools that y'all have latched on to that in those moments of adversity? Because I imagine anybody listening, or even myself sitting here, is like, these are all things that sound good when things are fine, but then when shit hits the fan, how do you ground yourself in this growth mindset? What are some tools that y'all have developed or helped other people develop?
Practice on your spouse.
It's so true. Practice on your
I'm dead
partner,
serious.
your spouse.
This is the
Elaborate.
best.
What do you mean?
So thanks.
Hey, babe, can you
So-
put me through some adversity this week? I need to practice.
Well, so a couple things. One is, so Mary and I have done this, and we've had many conversations on it of going, okay, I'm working on this. This is what I'm working
Yeah.
on. This is how I'm working on it. And you're going to notice when I'm not. So she can actually help me, not in a spiteful way, but like said, if I'm frustrated in what's going on, my goal for years was when I got frustrated, I didn't know how to not get frustrated. Like it was still happening because that felt out of my control. Like something happens. My response, I typically go to frustration and anger. That's where I go. Not physical anger or any of that. It's internal, but it comes out when I have a conversation. You can feel the force of my voice when I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I really want to work on this. I don't know how to get rid of that involuntary response, but once I have a response, I want to get better at it, but I don't know how. But the thing I can control is how long am I in that space?
Yeah.
So the first goal of that is, can I be aware that I'm not in the state I want to be in? And so what I started working on was linking, when I get frustrated, linking that to I'm failing and I don't want to fail. I know this ties into it. Like I'm failing poorly. So the goal is when I get frustrated to be aware of it and then to switch as quickly as I can. And so I told Mary this, I go, look, I'm really going to work on this. I'm going to screw it up. But that's my goal to accomplish, is that when I'm getting frustrated is to switch. And I did it so well that Mary was like,
I called him Jekyll and Hyde.
I'm like,
I got mad at him.
1 minute, you're not the next. And it was like,
I'm like, what is happening? Like, I'm so mad at him. I'm like, you
That's
just
so funny.
switched it off like that. He goes, well, no, I'm working on it. Well, let someone know you're working on it.
So it was like, but literally you can be, we're in a conversation. It's everybody's got a pattern to how they argue with their spouse.
Yeah.
And it's a great one to practice breaking, because when you do the same pattern over and over again, you're going to get the same result. It'll look slightly different, but it's the same thing over and over again. And we fight the same way. So I was like, we're going to break this. So it went to that, got frustrated. And I'm like, whatever. I said whatever I said. And she gets frustrated. And then I go, hold on a moment. Hold on. I did that wrong.
Yeah.
We back up for a second.
Yeah.
I want to say it differently. And just literally change it right there in the conversation. You do that about 10 to 15 times, I'm telling you, you will create new neural pathways because you're emotional, you're in it. And there are times where I wasn't doing it, and she was like, she would catch it, and she'd be like, hold on a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, we said we were going to work on this. And then it was like, and then it's she and I, even though we're disagreeing on whatever the topic was, she and I are supporting each other and helping each other with a change that's vital to our relationship. Well, now we switch this, take this 1 degree out, and I'm managing a team of people. So much easier.
Yeah.
Just because she can trigger me like nobody can.
Yeah.
Right? She knows
Your
the buttons to
spouse
push.
always
She
does.
does. Our spouse, But so I go to my team and something's not being done right. And I'm like, all right, so why are we doing it that way? What's going? It's easy to ask questions at that point because I can do it with the toughest one. So not calling Mary tough, but you get the point.
We have a choice as well for that growth piece. Do you want to be a person of growth? Do you want to truly put in the work? Because if you don't and you go, yeah, help me pay attention, you don't really want somebody to bring that awareness to you.
Yeah.
But if you truly want to work on something, then yes, use your partner, use someone, your best friend, someone who's around you all the time, that when they see you go to the dark side, that you've already gotten permission to bring them that awareness. So I have up here the mental mindset cube, and on setbacks it says blames others, gets discouraged, and those are the two that will show up. So setbacks, how we handle setbacks with a fixed mindset is we will blame others and get discouraged. We'll shut down. The growth mindset says we identify areas to improve, and we really look on how does this help us move forward and get better next time. And this is where oftentimes I can flip-flop. And when I say people will have a fix and a growth in different areas, it really depends. It's not like you have one or the other. Something will happen, and there's something that's like, so for me, when I have a setback, my brain goes into the growth. Let's figure this out. Well, what can we do? How can we do this better? But you take that into something else in the company that I feel completely out of control, I go into the fixed. I get discouraged. I can blame. And Eric is so good at calling me out. And I'll step back. He goes, but you're creating that. The way you just handled that, yet we do it in a respectful way. And I pause and then I shift. And so that's when you're looking at, if you really want to change behavior, surround yourself with people, give them permission to help you. It's not to shut you down. It's that we grow, that we get into that growth mindset, because adversity is everywhere.
Yeah.
Are you using it as, to give you a way out? Do you really want to move forward? Especially when we look at the first of the year, 50% of people who set goals quit by the end of January because they've had setbacks. They have failures. Well, what if this year you actually do something different? And you go, so now what? Like, I said I was going to do this. Give yourself grace, get back up, phone a friend and say, I need help. I need that accountability to get me going so that I can continue to make myself accountable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm on my soapbox.
No, I like that. I want to do two things that you said that stood out to me. One is that working out, right? We're talking, this is in January. There's a lot of people that are going after us. They're going to get this somewhere mid-January. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Your birthday.
So, okay, great. My birthday. So mid-January, that's usually people are still kind of on the bandwagon, but it's starting to feel a little routine. It's a little boring things are going on. There's a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And man, I couldn't promote that book more. It's so good. But he gets in there and he really gets into, you have to visualize yourself being the person that does this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's way more important than just holding yourself to the fire of going, I'm going to grind it out. You can only grind it out so far. If it's viewed as pain and agony, and you're just waiting for the failure because that's your pattern, it won't work. So it's kind of a side note, different topic, but but they're interwoven. If you're going to have the habits and recreate new habits, that book is amazing at giving you tools to do it. But the one that always stands out to me is, and last year, this is why it stands out. Last year, I really went to apply this. And in a lot of ways I did, and I'm still working on it, which was seeing myself as in shape and healthy and eating healthy and all those just healthy habits, but seeing myself as this super healthy. I don't like the word. I don't want to be super healthy, but I want to be healthy in a healthy way. But the thing was recreating. I used to be a college athlete, and here I am. I'm out of shape. I'm in my 50s, all these things, and recreating how I see myself and seeing myself as someone who can accomplish those things and does, because that's who they are. Anyway, it's cool habit changer. But the other thing you were talking about, and just getting into this failing forward a lot of times, or in the situation where we're talking about arguments with other people and arrogance, needing to be right, needing to, instead of so you go growth and fixed mindset. If I have to be right because I'm too insecure to be wrong, then you're going to be in a fixed mindset most of the time, especially when it comes to my personal development. Because if I have to be right all the time, I'll tell you, you're not. None of us are. Most of us are not right.
He's not talking about me, by the way. He's talking about all those other people.
All those other people.
Yeah. I will definitely talk for me here. I would say Mary is right more than I am. I don't catch
Did
details.
you hear that? This is actually recorded. And I do have a growth mindset. I'm just saying.
It depends what we're talking about. But yes, but the reality is I like to fail forward through it. I kind of embrace the mistakes, but that's who I am. That's easy for me. That's not as easy for Mary as she goes into things. She doesn't like to make mistakes. But the thing is, when we get latched onto, we have to be perfect. Typically, underneath, there's some, or I just need to be right to feed my ego, or I can't shatter my ego. I can't look helpless. All these different things. All those are rooted in insecurity. So it's digging in under, what are you actually insecure about? You're connecting your self-worth, and going back to where I started this with my dad, his self-worth connected with whether he was right or wrong. And when you do that, you can't persevere. You can't overcome, because you're latched on to, I'm a failure, I'm all these things, and your self-worth is dropping. So your confidence goes in the shitter, versus I failed and I survived should build confidence. And we learn from it. We move to the next thing.
Well, and you were saying, so everyone has a story, and we all have things that it comes from. So back to the very beginning, is it learned, My father, and this was the way he was taught, but he taught us, is that you better do it right. And it better be perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, there wasn't a lot of gray area. It was pain and pleasure. And there was a lot of pain if it wasn't done right. And so underneath the story that was always told to myself, if it wasn't right, then I was a failure. So the fixed mindset, it was so programmed. And I know, my father's passed now. And I think that if he would have known all this stuff, it would have broke his heart. Because knowing his heart, that wasn't what he ever meant.
Sure.
And as adults, though, we are at choice. We can either let the story dictate who we are, or we can change the story. Are we going to be a victim, or are we going to be victorious, right? And I look at the fix versus the growth. Once we have awareness, once we see, now we're at choice. So you say you're going to do something, talking about your goals, the beginning of the year, you want something. It doesn't work out the way that you wanted it. All right, pivot. So what now? What? How bad do you want it? Do you use it as an opportunity to make an excuse and quit? Or do you use it as an opportunity to dig in, to be disciplined and be consistent?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And we covered quite a bit there with tools. I wrote down, I congealed everything that y'all were saying, even though that's the worst word to use.
You did.
So number one, we talked about a while ago before we even got to this part, is just be aware. It starts with awareness. Second tool is have a spotter, which is what y'all were talking about, of invite somebody else into the process, let them hold you accountable to these new pathways that you're forming. The third one is literally practice, visualize, which I find as a very interesting one. Like visualize yourself having a growth mindset and overcoming adversity. The fourth one was Oh, and practice visualize was tied into habits, atomic habits. So as you build habits. The fourth one was check your ego.
Mhm.
And I'm missing a fifth one. And so I want to kind of land the plane here as we have final thoughts around moving from a fixed to a growth mindset, overcoming adversity. We've heard those 4 big tools. Anything come to mind as like a fifth
sure.
tool that we can add?
Did you say vision?
No, it was not.
No. So first and foremost, when I look at the fifth tool, is there has to be some sort of a vision, something that you know that you want. You, if you've listened to the other things, I'm big on vision boards. Write it down. Know that vision. Know who you are, which goes into atomic habits. When you know who you are, what you want, now you do the work to get there. And when it's hard, right, then you do the other things, but you have to have clarity. If you don't have clarity about who you are, what you want, why you want it, then when shit gets hard, you will not do it. You'll go into the fixed mindset, make excuses, justify, quit. But when you know and it's clear and you want it, and it's that fuel that burns day in and day out, and when it's hard, that vision is still in front of you. And you get back up, and you get back up, and you get back up.
So,
well, I think I'm going to move that up to number 1 then.
Yeah, that was good.
Craft a vision, be aware, have a spotter, practice, check your ego.
I think a lot lot of people are looking for the silver bullet here. They're looking for that. If I do this one thing, then everything works.
Yeah.
And this particular topic is anything but that. It is how over time we continue to improve in this category.
Yeah.
So that fail fast, fail often, like practice failing. Yeah. Put yourself in spots where, it doesn't matter as much if you do fail, but you still are failing and it has some type of impact and you're constantly striving to not fail. Yeah. But if you're not putting yourself in spots that you can fail, I mean, I don't know what you're doing, but I want to flip this and going back to you were talking about, is it innate? Is it learned? We are all born with certain predispositions towards our personality and things like that. And then that evolves over time. And part of that personality, there are people out there, if you just use normal like DISC theory, there are people out there that are more on the perfectionist scale. They want things exact. They want things right. And they're actually quite brilliant because they function that way. Well, these may seem like very conflicting mindsets. And their drive to be accurate and their predisposition to go that way, and then the ability to fail while doing it seem like they would be at opposite ends of the spectrum. And they are for most people. Well, I've seen some amazing leaders that are precise. They are detailed. They get things as accurate as they possibly can. And they also are amazing at failing. When it fails, what they do is they usually go back through. It doesn't hit them personally. It fails and they go, wow, well, let's evaluate this. They're almost like a scientist about it. And they go in and they evaluate what was the failure and why did it go this way? Oh, I understand. Next time I'll go apply it. And they're just more analytical about having the growth mindset. However, I do think that's more rare than common. Most of them, they fail and now it hits their self-worth, like I was talking about with my dad. And then they shut down and they don't do it again because they don't want to feel that way again. And that's just what we're talking about, is detaching those two and making failure a method for becoming awesome, because that's what it is.
I love that.
I also think there needs to be a sixth one in there, and that is give yourself grace and forgive, because we are our own worst critics and we are so freaking hard on ourselves. And sometimes, I mean, you go after it, you go so hard, and if it doesn't work out or if you make a mistake, so what? To brush it off. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know and you did. Forgive yourself for what you did do and you knew and but give yourself grace. Because in those moments, that's where we can change our mindset.
So that may sound, there's some people, I was a psychologist at told me this. It was like, okay, that's good for everyday failure. He goes, but the people that have deep failure, they just things that they've done in their life that they can't get through. First of all, seek a counselor, go get help. But the suggestion was from the counselor is when you've got those things, what would it take for you to forgive yourself?
Mm.
Like actually looking at it and going, what is it? What do you need to make this counterbalance? And when they start having to put it into a measurable quantity thing, it, for some of them, seemed to help quite a bit. And I've used that in coaching with a couple people throughout the years is what would it take? And if they go nothing, then they're condemning themselves to never being able to move past it and not being able to forgive. So anyway,
that's really cool tool. Well, with all this talk about failure, it really strikes in me, especially for people who may struggle with, like, I don't even know where to apply this. I can't, fail in my job, or I don't feel comfortable doing that. I would say find a small little new hobby, something that requires you to learn.
Yeah.
And because it's inevitable that you'll fail, and it does something for your brain, whether it's playing music, learning a language, carving, wood, pottery, you name it, painting. Failure in those kind of spaces is inevitable, but it helps you get past that hurdle, because it's not like, if I'm a musician, so I've learned a lot of pieces of music. If I fail to play it right, I can't just freeze. There is an innate thing of where you have to just move forward and figure it out.
Going.
I think athletics is similar to that.
Yeah.
So get a hobby. Jeez, it's the beginning of the year.
I even wanted to say, get out on the dance floor. Because so many times people are like, put yourself in places where you can be
you gonna go dancing?
I told you I would.
No,
but if you put yourself in a place where you can just have fun and it doesn't matter what you look like and you don't have to be the best, it opens up creativity. It opens up the ability, like, all right, I can do karaoke. I might not be able to carry a tune, but let's do karaoke.
All right, everybody's heard it. She's committed to going dancing. I won't even do my hair that night.
We'll do
Will you karaoke?
Sure, I will sing in the closet. I got it.
Here we go.
We have a karaoke machine.
I'm in.
Well, you've heard it here first. Everybody will live stream
our
next karaoke section. Eric just committed to that, and there's going to be a lot of failure involved.
There will be a lot of failure for everyone, but whatever. If y'all need to see it, I'm in.
Well, thanks for talking through this, y'all. I think it was really good. I like these tools that we've written down. And if you out there listening have any questions or want to chat through your own failures in life, you can give us a call, shoot us an email. As you can tell, Mary and Eric get fired up about this kind of stuff. So until next week, thanks, guys.
Bye.